Wasted? No, the only thing we owe you is a beating. They suddenly charged towards me. However, this was exactly the kind of thing that I had been training for my whole life. My father-in-law was quick though, and he punched me hard, but I was able to shrug it off, and I grabbed his arm and punched him hard enough to dislocate his arm, and then I kicked my brother-in-law in the stomach. Hi there, my name is Paul, and I'm not really your typical man's man. For starters, unlike most men, I have no interest in most kinds of sports. Whenever the guys around the office that I work at talk about the games from the previous night, I always just pretend that I know what they are talking about and rarely add anything to the conversations. Unfortunately, my father-in-law and brother-in-law are huge sports fans. They pretty much follow everything that is sports related. Thankfully, my wife isn't, and we have bonded over the fact that neither of us has any interest in such things, but at the same time, I've always wanted to get along better with them, and so one day I decided to invite them over to watch a soccer game that was on. They reluctantly agreed, and I knew that it was in no small part of my wife begging them to try and get along with me. I made sure to get a bunch of snacks and drinks, and I even bought a jersey so that I would fit in better. The day of the game arrived, and they came over. Hey guys, thanks for coming over. It should be a great game. Yeah, thanks for the invite. But, you're wearing the wrong team jersey. Didn't my daughter at least tell you which team to cheer for? Yeah, no kidding. Jeez, man, there better be beer at least. Yeah, I bought all kinds for us to enjoy. Sit down and let me get you guys one. Right out the gate, I had already screwed up. Part of me wanted to call the whole thing off, but I really wanted them to like me, and I was prepared to do nearly anything. I decided that I would win them over with food and drinks, and so I brought out a huge spread for them. Their eyes went wide when they saw the food. Here guys, help yourselves. Well, at least you have good taste in food, and in beer too. Just make sure to keep them coming. Soon after the game started, they had already polished off a good quarter of the food that I had brought out, and each of them had about 4 beers. They started chanting and cheering on their favorite players, but every time I tried to ask them questions about what was going on, they would just glare at me. Will you just shut up and watch the damn game? No one wants to hear you talk. Here, make yourself useful and get us more beer. I was a bit disappointed, but even this little interaction was more than I usually got to experience with them, so I honestly felt that it was a bit of a step in the right direction. Although near the end of the game, they were beginning to get a bit drunk and started saying hurtful things. I can't understand why my sister married you, to be honest. You act like such a woman sometimes. Yeah, didn't your father ever teach you how to act like a real man? Well, I do. I'm just not into watching sports. Yeah, but that's what we're talking about. Real men watch sports. They drink beer. You've barely even had more than 1 beer all night. That was true. I wasn't much of a drinker. I didn't really care for alcohol very much. However, I did enjoy one sport, but I wasn't going to bring it up as I was rather self-confident about it, and I knew that if mentioned that I had been taking karate all my life, that they would probably make fun of me for it. Yeah, you are kind of boring, Paul. You should really make more of an effort to be masculine, or else my daughter might just find another man. Their words hurt, but I was so determined to keep trying that when the game finally ended, I suggested that we hang out again. Thanks for the food and drinks, but it isn't the same watching the game here. We prefer to see the games live or at our favorite bar. Well, what if I buy us tickets to the next game? Really? Good tickets though, not cheap ones. For sure, yeah. I'll get great seats. They were skeptical, but they agreed. The next day, I told my wife what I had offered, and although she didn't think it was worth all the effort that I was putting into it, she did agree to let me buy expensive tickets in order to try to get her father and brother to go to the game with me. When I called them up to let them know that the tickets were secured, they seemed genuinely excited, and on game day, they were impressed at how close to the field we were. They cheered, and in order to keep them happy, I bought them plenty of food and drinks and put it all on my credit card. After the first half was done, I had to use the washroom, and so I gave my card to my father-in-law and told him to buy the next round with. By the time I came back, I had forgotten that I had given him the card, and when the game ended, I drove them home and then went home myself. It wasn't until the next day when I got an alert on my phone that my credit card was nearly overdrawn that I remembered that he still had it. I instantly went online and checked my balance and saw that he had purchased plane tickets and box seats to an away game for the team we had seen the previous night. I was so irritated, and I called him up and demanded that he return my card immediately. Hey, you had no right to purchase anything with my credit card, let alone plane tickets, game tickets, and 2 rooms at a 5-star hotel. What were you thinking? Oh, you can afford it. Besides, we're family. Don't tell me that you're going to act like a giant baby and tell us that we can't go. And here we thought you were finally acting like a man for once and not a sissy boy. Damn it. I'm warning you. If you don't give me back my card right now, I'm contacting the authorities. Yeah, right. You're too much of a coward to do that. And if you did, then I would kick your ass, you pathetic loser. He then hung up on me. I was so furious. I had tried my best to make an effort to get them to finally like me, and they repay me by stealing thousands of dollars from me and treating me like garbage. I stormed over to my wife and told her everything that had happened. At first, she was upset that I had forgotten that I had given her father my card, but in the end, she understood that it was a mistake and that he should have just given it back and not done what he had instead. I then told her that I was thinking about calling the police on her father, and after a few minutes, she agreed that it was the only reasonable thing to do. After all, he had stolen from us, and he needed to be taught a lesson. Before any more time had passed, I called up the police and reported the card stolen and gave descriptions of both my father-in-law and brother-in-law. A few hours later, they reported to me that they had apprehended them when their plane landed and had arrested them. They had only been in jail for 24 hours when my mother-in-law bailed them out. The next day, there was a loud pounding on my front door, and when I went to answer it, it was my father-in-law and brother-in-law. They were so angry that their faces were beet red. You coward! How dare you get us arrested? You have some nerve. We'll make you regret ruining our fun. Guys, this isn't a good idea. Just calm down. Honestly, I don't know why you are so upset with me. You stole money from me, and as far as I'm concerned, you owe me for all of the money of mine that you wasted. Wasted? No, the only thing we owe you is a beating. They suddenly charged towards me. However, this was exactly the kind of thing that I had been training for my whole life. My father-in-law was quick though, and he punched me hard, but I was able to shrug it off, and I grabbed his arm and punched him hard enough to dislocate his arm, and then I kicked my brother-in-law in the stomach. He toppled to the ground, but my father-in-law barely noticed his arm being limp and tried to punch me with his other arm. So I grabbed it and put it in a hold and told him not to move, or else I would break it. He of course tried to struggle and even tried to bite me, so I was forced to put a lot of leverage on his arm and break it. By then, my brother-in-law had recovered and was attacking me again, so I punched him as hard as I could in the face and broke his nose, causing him to fall unconscious. A few minutes later, police showed up as my wife had called them the second she heard her family at the front door. Thankfully, the police believed my story, and they hauled my in-laws to jail since they had broken the conditions of their bail. A few weeks later, my in-laws stood trial for attempting to assault me, as well as for theft. The judge heard both their side of events as well as mine, however, since I had receipts to back up what I was saying was true. The judge decided to sentence them to 2 years in prison each, while I got off with just a warning. Even though I was only defending myself, the judge considered how I had broken their arm and nose a bit of excessive force. I didn't agree, but I wasn't going to argue with the ruling since I didn't really face any consequences. Since then, things between my wife and her family have been very distant, and I do feel guilty about it, but honestly, only a little bit. She agreed that I was within my rights to both call the police on my in-laws and to defend myself when they attacked. As it turns out, they had always taken more than they were owed their whole lives, and she was sick of it. So even though I got revenge on them for the way they treated me, in a roundabout way, I also got revenge for how they used to treat her as well. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.